usual. And yeah, start with bodhicitta. So you all know what to do. So anyway, it's nice to just sit down and try to generate that attitude of wanting to achieve enlightenment, say, for sentient beings. Sometimes think about it, what it means. I talked a little bit about that last time. But from a class I was translating for yesterday morning. So I thought to mention, so while it's fresh. So one of the ways of meditating on bodhicitta is called equalizing and exchanging self and others. So just a moment. I thought I was just about to sneeze, but it didn't come. Okay, so and so I'll just mention what the main steps are. And then, maybe that will be enough for you to think of one that you would like to focus on, think about. So equalizing, exchanging self and others. There's that way of meditating on bodhicitta. So equalizing, you start off with equalizing self and others. And what it means is, whatever it might sound like anyway, what it means is recognizing all sentient beings are exactly the same as oneself in wanting just a moment. Yeah. Everybody is the same as oneself in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And this is actually already a huge thing, if you think about it. It really takes a particular kind of mind that is able to really take that in, to really digest that, to really live that. I was thinking there are, on TV shows you see these, what do they call them, profilers. So people who are, whose expertise is thinking about how the criminal would think. So then that's so you can catch them. So, but this is a bit different. Meditating on the equality of self and others it's really not just seeing how others' minds work, which is just the same as oneself in basically wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, but really feeling just like I want happiness, this other person, every other sentient being, this person in front of me, the person next to me, they are exactly the same, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. I mean, anyway, you can go a long way with that, with just that. Then thinking about the shortcomings of self-cherishing. So self-cherishing means where you put yourself first. It basically means a selfish mind. It's a selfish mind where you put yourself first. You don't care about anybody else. Then cherishing others. So that sounds very nice. Caring for others is actually not just caring for others. It's it's the opposite of the selfish mind. So we can be quite selfish and still think about others in a way, but here it's like just the opposite of being selfish. So then the next one is exchanging self and others. Yeah, exchanging self and others. And then, and on top of that, taking and giving. So exchanging self and others. Again, really, it's so you've seen how destructive it is to be selfish. You've seen how the opposite of that brings nothing but happiness for yourself and others, everybody around you, ultimately all sentient beings. How without being able to switch these two, in other words, to stop being selfish and instead be the complete opposite of that, which we call, cherishing others, then you'll have no happiness in this life. Never mind enlightenment. Of course, you're no way of achieving enlightenment if you carry on being selfish. You won't even find any happiness in this life, or as long as you stay in samsara. So anyway, I talked a bit more than I wanted to, but anyway, that's the thing. So just spend this next 15 minutes, if you want to, really going into this idea oneself and others are completely the same, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, or thinking about the drawbacks of selfishness. Then the next one is just the opposite of that anyway. So seeing your own selfishness, recognizing your own selfishness, and thinking about how much suffering it causes you. And it's a question, of course, am I selfish? Or at least do I have some selfishness? What does that selfishness do to me? Is it a good thing? Does it help me? Does it harm me? It's just to think about, isn't it? So we'll do that for until about 20 past. seems like one conclusion you can draw from that fact is that I'm never more important than anybody else. I'm not more important than anyone. And that's quite something, I think. So then we'll spend a few minutes watching the breath. And it's good to count. Sometimes it might seem a bit odd, the idea of counting. So as you're breathing in, still with the focus on the breath as it's passing your top lip, you count one, and then one again, or anyway, one breath is like in and out, then two, out, three, like that. And what's really good about counting is that you're more aware of whether you become distracted or not. Otherwise, you could think that you're focusing your attention on the breath, but actually you're not. And when you start counting, it's not that you start getting distracted because you're counting. It's the counting that shows you that it's quite easy to become distracted. So it's good to, count to 7. If you can manage more, then good luck. I always find 7 is just right. Sometimes you can do a bit more. Surprising how quickly you can get distracted and lose count. So we'll do that for a few minutes. And so now then we spend a few minutes meditating on pure mind, not paying attention to the objects of the senses, not to the sense consciousnesses, just the mental consciousness. Not thinking about the past, not wondering about the future. Simply being aware of the mind itself. Normally we're so much aware of various objects we hear, various things we think about. Now we're placing our attention simply on what it is that experiences those things, what it is that does the thinking, the mind itself, which is clarity and awareness. And now, as the Soul says, through that meditation, your mind becomes clearer and becomes more effective to do the main meditation. So here, the main meditation being a meditation on emptiness. So we'll spend some time thinking about how it is when I say I this and I that, or think to myself, I this and I that, my this, my that. How does I appear? How does that I appear to my mind when I'm thinking or saying that? So try to get a clear sense of how it appears and then start looking for it. That I, which is so central to our lives, always has been. Where is that? Look for it in the body and look for it in the mind, which means trying to find something in your body or your mind that you can point out and say, that's it. That's I, that's me. And having spent a few minutes searching, then go into the emptiness of that, which means thinking such a thing is unfindable, doesn't exist. I exist, but not like that. So we carry on with the text, middle-length treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Where we are is remembering the kindness of the Guru, and through that generating respect. I think I mentioned before that when it says generate respect, I mean, whatever you call it anyway, it's the feeling you get when you think about the kindness. And to really appreciate the kindness, because it talks about kindness in many ways in the next few pages, to really appreciate the kindness of your Guru, you need to have a good understanding of the suffering nature of cyclic existence, a good understanding of the situation you're in. And then, of course, somebody who comes along and starts showing you the way out, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? That's really amazing. So that's thinking of the kindness. And yeah, something I was reading recently, it made me think, it's true actually, you know, when we talk about the kind of person that you're, you know, going to relate to, as you follow, we could say devote yourself to, even as a guru, a spiritual guide, needs to be somebody that you can look at and think, I want to be like that. Yeah, that's interesting actually, because of course none of us, I mean, you'd have to be pretty stupid anyway if you thought that, well, I don't want to be a monk, so I'm not going to follow His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or I don't want to be a guy, so I'm going to have to find a woman. It's not like that. We know what we mean when we say, you know, I would like to be like him or her. There's something deeper, isn't it? Inner qualities that you sense this person has. So somebody you would want to be, somebody who has the knowledge about the path, and you get an idea. His Holiness often says, you know, it's absolutely, you know, acceptable, and not even just acceptable, but advisable to listen to a teacher like listening to a lecture at first. So you get an idea of the way they teach, the clarity of their understanding, and so on. You can do that for a while. You get a sense of the kind of person they are as well. So yeah, somebody who makes you think, I want to be like that. Yes. So now, anyway, so in this book, it's page 38. And anyway, it's where it says, remembering his kindness so as to generate respect. His or her kindness so as to generate respect. So the 10 Dharmas Sutra says, oh, I read this actually last week, didn't I? But anyway, it doesn't matter, we'll read it again. So I was wondering, you know, it says he looks for me. And again, as often is the case, you look in the Tibetan, you can't find a he or a she or an it. So, you know, when we, I think, let's see, yeah, I think Geshe-Zopa, his advice, is you imagine your teacher in front of you. So it makes more sense to say you, right? To be thinking of your guru in front of you. Maybe you have a photo in front of you. Anyway, so you've come looking for me who has roamed in psychic existence for a long time. And I find that actually, even if none of the others, just that one, that's really quite amazing. That's really quite amazing. I think, this particularly, so in the FPMT, in the early days, people went to the East and they found the lamas. They found Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa. But then the lamas went traveling. So it's like they came looking for us. So you see, they knew that there were people around the world that they had a connection with. And not all of them had the idea to travel east to find somebody, and maybe just wasn't that awareness. And I'm not even sure that everybody went to the east, but it was like that they were looking for some meaning to their life. People say that, but I'm not sure everybody did. Maybe some of them were just going there for a good time. I don't know. But anyway, so that's quite something, I think. So anyway, so they came looking for us. So why did they come looking for us? So remember from last week, the way Geshe Zopa, I was telling you, Geshe Zopa was putting it, it's like, when a pet is lost or a child is lost, then somebody who really cares goes looking for them. So, to have that attitude towards your teacher as somebody who has come looking for you, because you're lost in psychic existence and you've been lost a long time and they've come looking for you. Then you awaken me from the enduring obscuration and torpor owing to ignorance. So torpor, I think I said before, I can't really see why torpor, it's sleep actually. So sometimes when explaining the meaning of Buddha, particularly Sangye, so yeah, even the Tibetan word, the first word Sangye, the Sang, has this idea of awakening from what? The sleep of ignorance. So it's like we've always been asleep. We've always been, in that sleep of ignorance. And so, the guru is the one that comes along and wakes you up. Your mind is obscured and asleep, and so the guru comes along and wakes you up. Then you pull me out. So I'm sinking in the ocean of psychic existence, the ocean of samsara. They often give the analogy of an ocean, don't they? That's very common, actually, the ocean of samsara. I think when it really makes sense is like you imagine an ocean as maybe as big as the world, but anyway, maybe imagine being stuck in the middle of the Pacific. Don't know how it happened, but anyway, somehow you're in the middle of the Pacific. I mean, how are you going to feel about somebody who comes along and picks you up out of the ocean? So sunk in the ocean of existence, being pulled down into the quagmire of samsara. And so here somebody comes along and is pulling you out. Of course, this is all, they're all analogies, aren't they? I mean, what they're actually doing is teaching you, mainly teaching you by, in informal ways, but there are other ways that they can teach you through the way that they lead their lives. So anyway, yeah, so you show a good path to me who has entered a bad one. So, there's that's the analogy of somebody who has who's spiritually going down the wrong path and is being shown that the path that they're going down is wrong, and that this one is better, this one is going to, but also it's, if any of you has ever been lost, you know what it's like to be lost. I mean, like you just don't know whether you're supposed to turn right or left, or you get lost in, I mean, we get people here, sometimes they go off into the forest, and I can't remember hearing of anybody getting lost for days on end in that forest, but people, they get lost for a long time, they get disoriented. So then you meet somebody who's going to say, oh yeah, it's down here, no problem, and they show you the way. So of course, then a billion, trillion, gazillion times more important than that is showing you the right path, the path that's going to lead to happiness instead of suffering. So you free me who has been bound in the prison of existence. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? So you're in prison. What do you feel about somebody, especially on one of the not one of those Swedish prisons I've heard of, which is apparently quite nice. You might even want to break the laws, so you get put into one of them. Food and shelter and all that. Think something more like some of the awful prisons that we know about. Even in the States and here and there in the world. So you are the doctor to me who's long been tormented by illness, and then the rain clouds drenching me. So anyway, so it's like the attachment and anger are like very destructive fires blazing within ourselves. And so with the teacher with their teachings, then they quench the flames. So then this comes from the marvelous Array Sutra, the Gandavyuha Sutra. Gandavyuha Sutra. So the Vyuha, that's in the long Chinrezi mantra, Vyuha Rajaya. Never could work out how that really fits, but anyway, that's by the way. Yes. So again, imagining your teacher in front of you and contemplating their qualities. And you might even, this might be something that gives you some inspiration, and you might make up your own list. And actually, in Geshe Zopa, then he talks about, you can make a song about it if you want to. I don't feel particularly inspired to myself, but yeah, this is very nice. So anyway, Jerimshe himself, Lama Tsongkhapa does say, recite this like singing with a nice tune. So yeah, so this so like with the previously, the developing faith, which means seeing the Guru as an enlightened being. This is also somehow encouraging yourself to think in a very positive way about your teacher. And so then it becomes, it's like the point comes up that it's not so much whether your teacher is an enlightened being from their own side, but this is somebody that you've already checked very carefully. You know that they have the qualities that you need in somebody if they're going to lead you along the path. Then on that basis, the more positive your attitude, the more you're going to get out of the relationship. So here, it's almost like a spin-off from the previous section, because it's just, like 100% seeing the kindness. So thinking of the teacher in terms of the kindness. Yeah, so this, anyway, this, shows how the the whole of one's progress towards becoming a bodhisattva, and then from the time you're a bodhisattva, progressing along the path through the 5 paths to enlightenment. This is all depends upon your teacher, that guidance. And yeah, so I didn't mention a book by Alex Berzin, which I think is very interesting. He has some very interesting things to say about relationship between the teacher and the student. It's called Wise Teacher, Wise Student. Apparently now it didn't used to be called that, I don't think. But anyway, so Wise Teacher, Wise Student. That's the only one that I could find by him on this topic. So I guess they've changed the name. So anyway, he makes the interesting point, which I think, eventually it does become your experience, which is that a particular teacher, one teacher might sort of like bring you along to a certain point. Then other teachers are maybe taking you along the another section of your path. You might find that there are some teachers that you really somehow relate to, anyway, I can't think of a better word. You really relate to them very well for certain things, certain parts of your practice. This teacher is really helpful, but another teacher you might find them very helpful for something else. I mean, it could be a particular practice. It could be maybe this master, maybe you're really, you've got some real karma, you're really drawn towards Kala Chakra. So you might go to this master for Kala Chakra teachings. This one is really good with the Lamrim teachings, how to meditate on bodhicitta. Or this one is fantastic for meditation on emptiness. You're not really judging one as good or bad, but somehow you click with them for particular topics. So, it works like that. It's not like you have to have, some people do, but it's not like you have to have this one teacher who's your teacher for everything. So these are my spiritual friends, expounders of the Dharma, exhaustively teaching the qualities of all phenomena. So, I wonder, the qualities of all phenomena. So phenomena, like everything which exists is a phenomena. So in other words, exhaustively teaches the qualities of everything that exists. So you might wonder about that because, we're used to the idea that your teacher is going to teach you about, the stage of the path, maybe the Madhyamaggavatara and so on and so on, but like they're going to teach you the qualities of all phenomena. So what does that mean? Well, in one way, when they teach that everything is dependent arising, they're teaching about the qualities of all phenomena. When they teach that everything is empty, they're teaching them the qualities of all phenomena. And in fact, you can learn from everything. They say that that's one of the ways of depicting Milarepa. I don't know if it's his right hand or left hand, but he's sort of like holding his ear, like listening. I remember hearing that what that means is, like his attitude was you can learn from everything. There's a lesson everywhere kind of thing. And it's true. So, I can remember one time in Australia, actually, and Lama Zopa, wanted us to go to this flower garden. And it was like, he was completely, it is like he found it amazing because it's like each flower with its particular shape and colors and arrangement of the petals and so on, all were dependent upon something, that it's all dependent arising. So sort of like I might not have completely got what the lesson was, but it was to do, with the causes that you would have to be created, that have to precede that as a result kind of thing, everything happening precisely, results happening precisely according to the causes, that kind of thing. So, yes, you can learn from everything. Thoroughly teaching the conduct of bodhisattvas. With these thoughts in mind, I have come here. So I'm not quite sure what that means. It says below also, it's like the last line of the next paragraph. With this in mind, I, Sudana, have come here. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what that means. I have come here. Like, come where? You know, maybe if you read the whole sutra, you would get more of a sense of, you know, what he meant to say specifically when he said, with these thoughts in mind, thinking this way, I have come here. But one thing I do take from this is, when you do go to see your teacher, it's good to think of these things, to prepare your mind in that way. So you're not just going to see, you know, old what's his name for a chat. You're going to see this person. See, on the one hand, this person who you're not 100% sure, but it looks to you like this person is actually, you know, the Buddha Shakyamuni. When he passed away, it's not like he just deserted the whole world. He carries on helping, and this is how he's helping. You know, this is who I'm going to see. This is what this person has done for me and is doing for me. So going with that kind of attitude, then your mind is much better prepared to, much more receptive to anything that you know that they might have to show you or to explain to you or whatever when you go to see them. Yes, okay. So it can be very useful, because sometimes you might have a teacher who is quite strict, maybe doesn't stand for any kind of what do they call it? Yeah. So it doesn't stand for any kind of nonsense. Okay, let's say nonsense. They don't stand for any nonsense. So when you go to see them, if you're not prepared, then you might just get irritated and walk out. So if you go in and say, you know, go in with the expectation that this is what they're like, they're not going to stand for any of my nonsense. So with your mind prepared, things go much better. As they give birth to all of this, they are like my mother. They pour forth the milk of virtues, hence they are like wet nurses. So, you know, the person who gives birth to you and the person who is your wet nurse can be two separate people, but it can be the same one. So, you know, same person. I guess you wouldn't say wet nurse in that case, but anyway. So since they are like the mother to everything that I've learned and everything that I've gained, it's like they gave birth to all of that. So they're like my mother. And not only did they help me to get started, but they nourished me with the teachings and advice and example of how to lead the life. Just like the wet nurse, so they're like that, the wet nurse. They train me thoroughly in the branches of enlightenment. So there is no, it doesn't mention an analogy, does it? But anyway, apparently what this is referring to is the 37 branches of enlightenment, which is particularly associated with the, you know, like the 4 mindfulnesses and the 4, you know, the Noble Eightfold Path and things like that. So anyway, particularly associated with the solitary realizer practitioners. So anyway, then these spiritual friends completely turn away harm. So it could be that literally they turn away harm, but the main point is that because of them, you're able to turn away harm because they teach you about karma. So harm comes from, when you're harmed, it's because you created the karma to be harmed. So they show you how to avoid the kind of karma that, will result in you being harmed. They're like doctors that release one from aging and death. So not just from sickness, but also from aging and death. And that's because they teach you a way to transcend those. So they teach about emptiness. And when you've realized emptiness, then eventually, you can achieve liberation. And then you're beyond aging and death, beyond the suffering of aging and death. Anyway, that's the main thing. Then, like Lord Indra, they shower rains of nectar. So this is the nectar of their teaching. So again, going with the theme of the rain. So this is a rain that cures drought and famine. So, being ordinary sentient beings floundering in samsara, so the ocean of samsara. So anyway, it's like we have our own famine, of course, as well as possibly being born in a place where there is famine and drought. But anyway, sort of the inner famine, the inner drought, this gets cured with the rain of nectar of their teaching. Then, like the full moon, they enhance the white qualities. More like they enhance the white qualities, like the waxing moon, like the full moon, I suppose. Anyway, so they through their teaching and so on. So then, through you practicing it, of course, not just being there and listening. Through listening to them teach and then practicing accordingly, then your own good qualities that you didn't have before, you come to have, and then they develop more and more, just like the moon waxing full. Then, like bright sunlight, they show the way to peace. So it's like a path that you can't see in the dark, but now they're like, with their teaching again, with their wisdom, their compassion, then that's like sunlight, which shows you the way, so you can see it clearly. When the sun's shining, you can see the road clearly. Then regarding friends and foe, they are stable like mountains. So this is to do with the equanimity, their quality of equanimity. And then, through their teaching, then you can have that equanimity. And so you're not also sort of like rocking backwards and forwards, friend, enemy, stranger, and kind of thing, like that. Then their minds are as undisturbed as the depths of the ocean. Actually, their minds are undisturbed, as undisturbed as the ocean. You can see why he has maybe put the depths of the ocean, because maybe thinking, well, the surface of the ocean can be very rough. And even though the surface of the ocean is very rough, it can be very calm deep down. But this is something that we have talked about in when meditating on the mind like an ocean. So the thing is, no matter how huge the waves might be on the ocean doesn't change. It's still just ocean. It's all just seawater. Whether it's completely still or whether it's, the huge waves, it's still just the ocean. Nothing changes. Then they give perfect support. So it's a bit odd anyway. So they give perfect support. So this is to do with like being a guardian, the one who guards you. And I don't know really whether some say like boatman comes from. It's like the pilot of a ship. They're like the pilot of the ship. So it's like, the one who knows which way to go, where to direct the ship that you're on, So with this in mind, I, Sudana, have come here. Then he goes on to say, these bodhisattvas bring forth my understanding. So that's interesting, isn't it? Referring to them as bodhisattvas. So anyway, the interesting thing is that, you know, your teachers, So even if you're relating to, or even just trying to relate to your teacher as an enlightened being, sometimes it works like that. That, you know, you have that kind of attitude. Oh, this person's a real bodhisattva. Whatever else, you know, they're a real bodhisattva. I mean, I can remember one time in you know, taking a walking up to Shita Dharamsala, you know. So Lama was in this jeep. Lama Yeshe was in this jeep going up, and so he got them to stop to let me on. I can't remember. I was probably just trying to be sociable or something. So I can't remember exactly what I had said to him. But anyway, he said, yeah, it was after a teaching with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So he said, yes, I mean, the thing is, His Holiness has just been like a bodhisattva for so many lifetimes. And so the thing is, sometimes it can be more inspiring to think of your teacher as having been, you know, like practicing on the path as a bodhisattva since many lifetimes, maybe even thousands of lifetimes. When you think about the Buddha, you know, they say he took 3 countless great eons, which is, you know, with each great eon being, was it 10 to the 59 eons? A countless great eon is 10 to the 59 eons. And an eon is just kind of unimaginable also. It's like, I don't know, billions of years or trillions of years, I'm not quite sure. Basically, the amount of time that it takes for one Big Bang to the next Big Bang. If you assume that you have the Big Bang, then everything shrinks again, and then everything becomes empty, and then another world forms. So the time between those, that's what from one beginning to the next beginning, or from one end to the next end, that would be an eon. So I mean, how long is that? Billions of years, a trillion years? I don't know. So anyway, 10 to the 59 of those. So you can imagine that means practicing as a bodhisattva for so many lifetimes you can hardly imagine. So to think of, you know, your teacher as somebody who's like just spent so many lifetimes practicing the path, that can sometimes be even more inspiring. I know some people who think, you see, there's different ways of looking at the life of Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, similar thing. So according to one way of looking at his life, is like he was already, right from the beginning, he was Manjushri. He was Manjushri, the Buddha of compassion, of wisdom. In fact, you know, like considered an emanation, or in other words, the embodiment of not just Manjushri, but also Chinrezi and Vajrapani. So when you think like that, that's actually quite amazing, because it means, you know, so everything that he wrote was this, was the writing of an enlightened being. But some find it more inspiring to think of him as being somebody who started off probably pretty extraordinary, but not an enlightened being. Because when you listen, you know, you read about his story, I mean, he must have been he was obviously pretty special, even if you forget about, you know, the whole idea of being an enlightened being, you know, just starting off as an ordinary being, not ordinary like us, or I should say not ordinary like me. Really quite special, but then, you know, still having struggles to go through and not being able to see Manjushri face to face in the beginning, having to rely upon somebody else, Lama Umapa, then gradually being able to see him face to face, and, you know, like Manjushri helping him to develop his understanding of emptiness, And then they say, you know, according to that view, then he achieved enlightenment in the intermediate state, you know, in the bardo. That's what they say. So that can be more inspiring, can't it? So that's how I know. That's how I feel. It's kind of like quite moving also to think. Like it says here, you know, these bodhisattvas bring forth my understanding, help me to develop my wisdom. These bodhisattvas, my teachers, they cause the enlightenment of Buddha's children. So the bodhisattvas, they bring the bodhisattvas to enlighten other bodhisattvas to enlightenment. These beings, these friends of mine, are praised by the Buddha. With such virtuous thoughts, I have come here. As they save the world or protect the world, they are like heroes. They have become the captains, protectors, and refuge. Maybe my captain, protector, refuge, or the captains of the world, protectors of the world, refuge of the world. They are the I bestowing happiness on me. With thoughts like these, I honor my spiritual friends. So Lama Tsongkhapa himself says, recollect the sentiments expressed here by using a tune to go with the verses, aspiring to take the part of Sudana yourself. So, you know, these are Sudanas, the Bodhisattva Sudanas words. So you just imagine, you know, well, if you're reading it, then actually it will be you reading it, right? But anyway, so you just put yourself in his place. Okay. So maybe you can read a little bit more. So this is the way to rely through your actions. So this comes from a very famous text on about Guru devotion. One which is very closely connected with the the teachings of the Vajrayana. So there are these verses. What need is there for many words here? Do everything to make your guru happy, abandon everything he is displeased by, he or she is displeased with, apply yourself to that, examine that. So I've seen it translated, this is okay, I mean, but I've seen it translated a little bit differently. It's more like, whatever, so it seems a little bit different to me to put it this way, do whatever pleases your guru. So in other words, if you're thinking what to do, what you need to do is whatever is going to please your guru. Now, why is that? Because the only thing that is going to please your guru is when you're practicing. So in other words, just practice. It's a bit like saying that, but it's useful anyway. So if I do this, is my teacher going to? Would my teacher be pleased with that? Is this something that would please my teacher? It can be useful to ask yourself that question when you're thinking of yelling at somebody. Or whatever, anyway. And it is true, though. And in fact, there's one practice where you just recollect or just keep in mind that the Buddhas are always aware of whatever's going on. So even if you're thinking it would be nice to say something really, cutting to this person, even you're thinking about it, enlightened beings would be aware of that. Why wouldn't they? What's the use of being omniscient if you don't know everything that's going on? So anyway, they know. So, at least it's useful to ask yourself, would my teacher be proud of me for this? Would they be pleased? Would they be happy with me? If the answer is no, they wouldn't, then, maybe try not to do it. Better not to do it. Is this something that's going to displease my teacher? Yes. Oh, then in that case, I shouldn't do it. So anyway, you get the idea. If you think it's going to please them, then go ahead and do it. If you think it's going to displease them, then don't do it. And if you think, well, they probably wouldn't care one way or the other, which means, what you're thinking of doing is something actually quite neutral, then it doesn't really matter one way or the other whether you do it or not. Although at the same time, if you can find some way of transforming it, maybe like sleep, sleep isn't particularly a sort of what you might call a virtuous thing or a non-virtuous thing. But if you think to yourself, well, if I don't sleep, I'm going to die. I have to, but if I don't sleep, I'm not going to be healthy. If I'm not healthy, then that's not good. It's not good for me. It's not good for my practice. It's not good for anybody. I know very well from trying to get by on not enough sleep. I definitely get bad tempered. So anyway, there's, so anyway, bodhicitta attitude, bodhicitta motivation. Then the whole time that you spend asleep becomes something positive, something constructive. It becomes, a bodhisattva practice. Otherwise, if you just sort of like, which can happen easy, so you start getting tired, maybe you might even been studying, you might have been watching TV or whatever. People do watch TV these days still. But anyway, it's quite easy just sort of like stumble across the room and just lay down and not think of anything, isn't it? Just sleep like a cow, which I shouldn't say maybe because poor cows. But anyway, you know what I mean. So it's good to get the habit maybe of trying to spend a few moments at least, putting yourself in the right frame of mind. Try to get the bodhicitta motivation for sleeping. And then it's like then it's great, isn't it? You spend 6, 7, 8 hours practicing virtue in your sleep. So I think I'm going to stop there, actually. Yeah. So that's where we got 50 verses. But oh yeah, maybe what I usually do. So if there are questions, then I can try and answer questions. If not, we'll read a little bit more. Anybody, anything? Okay.
Actually, I have a question.
Well,
Something you said last week at the end of the class, and I wrote it down.
Oh, this is Cheryl. Okay.
Yes, this is Cheryl.
Okay.
You said something about self-initiation on a daily basis.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean?
Self-initiation is, do you know what self-initiation?
No, I have no idea.
Okay. So what that means is, this is mainly with the highest yoga tantra. If you take highest yoga tantra initiation and then do the retreat followed by a fire puja, then you're able to do self-initiation. What that means is, it's often called actually self-entry. And what it means is you're able to enter into the mandala and take the bodhisattva and tantric vows and all of the initiations by yourself without having to go to a lama. And that means you're able to, it's a very powerful, very effective way for purifying any mistakes you might have made with your bodhisattva and tantric vows. And so normally, like we do it here quite regularly. We try to anyway. We try to do it once a month. The pandemic has made a big difference, but anyway, we're going to be doing it quite soon. So the ones that we do, Vajragini and Yamantaka, they take about around 5 hours. Okay, with short breaks here and there. Whereas if you do it on a daily basis, then there's it can take much less time. I mean, like 15-20 minutes.
But it would be something you would take that practice, you would do the 5-hour basically training, and then from then on you would do it on your own.
Well, that would probably be the best way, because if you're familiar with it from having done the long one, then it's easier to relate to what's going on in the short one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So when is the next one scheduled?
The next one is scheduled for next week, I think. But this is you would only be able to do this if you've already done the received initiation, done the retreat and fire puja, right?
Okay.
So the
Okay.
next one is this. I think it might be next Monday. Let's see. It says no. Next Monday is the Medicine Buddha puja. Then the 30th of this month. It's a Thursday. That's why we've got a break. So we'll be doing it 3 till about 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's only available to certain individuals who've already done.
Yes, that's the sort of what they call it, the course. Anyways, yeah, you need to have received initiation. Then, having received initiation, done the retreat where you have a certain number of mantras to recite, and then you would follow that by doing the fire puja, and from that point onwards, for the whole of your life, whenever you want to do self-initiation, you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So you're going to do it?
Well, I don't know when it's going to be available for me to take the first step.
Okay, yes. So, well, hopefully we're not going to be stuck in this situation forever. And hopefully before too long, the lamas will be visiting.
Okay.
So those are the ones to look out for anyway. Yamantaka, Solitary Hero, and then Vajrayogini, because those are the self-initiations we do. Other deities, you can also have self-initiation, but we don't do them together as a group.
Okay.
Like Tara Chittamani. If you do Tara Chittamani, then there's a Tara Chittamani self-initiation, but we don't do that as a group here. We never have them. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Steve, just a quick question about that. Is anybody doing empowerments via Zoom?
Is anybody doing what?
Empowerments via Zoom.
Oh, right. Well, that kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if it would happen eventually, but it would probably take somebody like His Holiness to be the first one. So His Holiness has given the great Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig empowerment towards the beginning of the pandemic. So, sometime last year, but he hasn't done one. It hasn't done one of the highest yoga tantra ones, and I haven't heard of anybody doing that. They might, there might be people that do them, but then of course you want to be very careful that this is somebody who you want to receive the empowerment from. There's no good just going to somebody because they're giving it, even if you have the idea, well, I want to receive it from them, but then that's it, that me and that person is finished, because it doesn't work like that. They become your guru. I mean, it's true that it's not like you have to have a personal connection, or let's say personal relationship with all of your teachers. In other words, not all of your teachers will be the kind of teacher that you can go along to see, ask questions and so on. It might be that they came round that once and then they go back to Tibet or India or wherever, and you never see them again. They're still your guru, they're still your teacher. You have to keep going with that, but you see what I mean? Yeah. Okay. So unless there's somebody else who wants to ask something, then we can stop there. Okay. So if we dedicate then all of the positive energy or good karma or merits that we've created as a group this evening, and then dedicating that along with all of the merits or virtue of the past done by oneself and all others, all other beings, all other sentient beings, all of the enlightened beings as well, all the Buddhas. Likewise, the present and the future. So it's nice to think that each one of us, there's no sentient being that doesn't get enlightened. So there's no sentient being that doesn't eventually follow the Bodhisattva path, just like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past did. So thinking all of that and feeling a sense of deep joy and appreciation for that, what they're going to do. So dedicating all that for the long lives of our holy gurus, especially His Holiness Kyabdja Rinpoche, all the teachers of this center, like anyway, so many. Kishingan Rapa, Kimikins Rinpoche, Jara Rinpoche, Kyabdja, and all of those beings in this world and other worlds that are guiding sentient beings on a true path to genuine, lasting happiness, for them to all have long lives, for all of their wishes to be accomplished or to be fulfilled, so that all sentient beings will very quickly achieve the perfect happiness of complete enlightenment. And then think that I, the one whom dedicating, seems there as an I, which is not merely labeled by the mind, an I which is completely independent of anything. So this is the one that we've always believed in, but in fact never did exist. So that I doesn't exist, and nor also the action of dedicating, and what we dedicated and what we dedicated it to. So all of these also, they seem, and they're not merely labeled by the mind. There seems to be something more there than just being labeled by the mind. But in fact, you can never find such a thing. It doesn't exist. Okay, thank you, everybody. So don't forget, no class next week, but we'll have a class the week after. Okay. See you, everybody.